Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, here from the Combine. About to catch a flight here in a couple hours, but wanted to hit on a couple things before we get out of here. Just some overall takeaways, thoughts, talking to different guys, and just talk a little football before we also talk Jason Light and Matthew Berry. So we got a bunch of content up here on the page, so make sure you check that out. Howie, we'll have interviews coming out throughout next week as well. Andy Reid, Brett Veach, and so yeah, it was good. We had a fun week. I feel good. My voice is back, and I'm really glad I came because this is a very, very unique week. I mean, I was just bullshitting with Jonathan Gannon, who I know through the Eagles guys. I don't know him. I just met him through those guys. So it's just everyone's relaxed. Everyone's got a smile on their face, and everyone's in a very, very good mood. So we'll do a little combine talk here. Kind of ending it before all these workouts start. But first, what I need you to do, where's my smartphone? Grab your smartphone and download a little app. And that app is Gametime. And they're the official ticketing app of this podcast. I was at dinner last night and we looked up and the Pacers were playing at home against the Pelicans. Zion Williamson, who looks like a defensive lineman. I thought, damn, I should have gone to the game. And if I had gone to the game, what I would have done is I would have gone to the Gametime app. I would have typed in Pacer game. I would have picked where I wanted to sit, found the price point, and then I would have bought a pair of tickets. And when I checked out, I would have used the promo code JOHN, 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 promo code John, $20 off. Very, very easy to do. And if you want to go to a basketball game, college or pro, any sporting event, concerts, going to try to get out some concerts this spring, maybe this summer. And enjoy yourself, do it on us. Download the Gametime app, promo code John. Save yourself $20 at checkout. Cannot recommend it enough. Where do I want to start? I obviously spent a lot of time around the Kansas City Chiefs and just different guys from that staff. It turns out I talked to 3 or 4 guys that either coached or worked for the Ravens. And it's crazy the similarities between the successful teams here. Obviously, in the NFL, especially in the AFC, you're going to need one of the star quarterbacks. Without that, you have no shot. I think Sean Payton's a good coach. Until they figure out the quarterback situation, they're in trouble. The Raiders, no shot. The Patriots, you don't even discuss them. The Titans, Will Levis. But the 2 best teams in the AFC this year, I actually think have a lot in common. And, talking to those guys with the Ravens, and I know this with the Chiefs, like the number one thing that stands out is how serious those fucking places take football. And the number one thing I heard from both operations is obviously it's a good place. People like working there. It's a successful place. But I kept hearing it from both, like, this is not a country club. This is not kumbaya 24/7. Like, the pads are coming on. This is a very physical operation. I'm not talking about on game day. I'm talking about through the week. I'm talking about all season long. I'm talking about in the playoffs. Like, you buckle your chin strap at practice because you're hitting. And in a league, because of the rules that has changed dramatically, right? You can't hit, like, you watch some of that Patriot Dynasty and you see some of the physicality that was in the league. Some of us call it like the good old days. Now, I didn't play, I just watched as a young kid, but the league's dramatically different. The Steve Atwaters, the John Lynch's, the Lawrence Taylors, like those days, it's different. It's still a very, very physical game. And all the teams, when the dust settled, were physical squads. Even Detroit, who is still improving their defensive personnel, like that's a good example. Like, that coach is not fucking around. Like, it's not like the mentality in these organizations, and obviously one thing the Chiefs and the Ravens really, really have is cohesion. So when we're at the combine, a lot of these teams, they're not on the same page. Their coach views stuff one way, their GM views something another way. It's like they got no shot. I mean, seeing some of these brands when you're walking around, right? Because everyone's wearing team logo. You go, that team's got no shot. That team's got no shot. That team's got no shot. So when I'm talking to guys from the Ravens with John Harbaugh, who's been there for a decade and a half, and Andy Reid now, who's won 3 Super Bowls, you're like, how many people are they actually competing against when the season starts? Seriously. Like in the entire league, of 32 teams, 10? 10. Think about that. So the number one quality I've seen in both organizations is the streamlined ideas of everyone's on the same page with what we want, what we need, and what we're going to approach to get, and the type guys we want. This isn't obviously player acquisition is not an exact science. You're dealing with human beings, but I would say both of them have it pretty dialed as well as you can possibly. You talk to people with the Ravens, like Ozzie Newsome's in these meetings still. Eric DaCosta has been there forever. The mentality of the coaches they hire, and listen, this is why a lot of people, one thing I've heard constantly from people here is like, the Chargers are coming. They're going to be good. Why? Jim always wins. And who did he hire? A John Harbaugh guy who's been with the Ravens for decades, who I met briefly, bald-headed guy, rooting for Joe Ortiz. So when you get a general manager and a head coach who philosophically think about football the same and who have a good relationship and who are good, like you're going to win. And most of these teams just don't have that. They just do not. And listen, when you're good, you're going to lose coaches. The Ravens just lost Mike McDonald to Seattle. Well, someone told me last night, they're like, I think this next defensive coordinator is a stud too. And I ran into Darius Hayward-Bay, who I've known from the Bay Area, who obviously was a top 10 pick for Al Davis. And then he went on to the Pittsburgh Steelers and kind of became a role player and played on special teams. And I didn't even recognize him. He was wearing a Ravens outfit. He's a pro scout. And he was like, bro, this place is badass. So it's just, I am just so impressed. It's like any high level organization. Success is not random. The stories you hear about the philosophical way they operate on a daily basis, and it's not always like, I'm not talking it's just super serious and screaming constantly. Like every coach is a little bit different. But the level of focus on, it's not about money, it's not about the brands, it's about winning. Like talking BSing with Andy a little bit off the podcast about the Travis moment when he shoved him, and he laughed about it and kind of told Travis, don't ever do that to me again, kind of jokingly. But like that's Travis. All of his chips were in the middle of the table. Even the Ravens were like, we didn't quite expect to see that level guy. And he killed him. He had whatever, 14 catches against him. And you just get high level players. Some of the stories I heard about Roquan Smith, like, God, that's a guy I want in the trenches. Like, I want Roquan Smith on my freaking team. And these teams just know what they're looking for. And it's why the Ravens are a good example. Over the years, they have let so many guys leave in free agency. And they've always been good. They've just been consistently pretty good, right? Doesn't mean, and listen, the Chiefs are in a situation right now, like they were winning a lot of Super Bowls. Well, during like Peyton had really, really good teams. He only won the one Super Bowl in Indianapolis. But like no one would argue that those Colts teams weren't, beside the Patriots, probably the best team in the league over the course of, 12, 10 plus years. And I think you get this probably in any sport, but football is unique because every team has money. Every team has the financial resources now to pay coaches a lot of money. And I think there are a lot of good coaches in the NFL. Like a lot of these head coaches, you meet them. I was talking to Kevin Stefanski in the room the other day. Like they're really impressive guy. I think Kevin Stefanski is a really good coach. And so much of it, in this period of time for these next couple, months, I guess, free agency and then the draft is dependent on the cohesion of your operation and the cohesion and I would say the ability to locate exactly what you want and have a clear vision because you can't locate what you want if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. And the best teams know exactly what they're looking for. I've seen it forever with the 49ers. Like, it doesn't mean you're not going to miss on players. It doesn't mean you're going to be right on every guy. You're going to, but you're going to hit on more than you miss on. And the guys you hit on are going to have huge impacts. And this is why this time of year it's so important for the guys to like football, for the guys to be all in. The media always freaks out whenever it comes up. Yeah, we think he's got too many interests. They're like, oh, shut up. Let him be balanced. Balance doesn't win in society at the highest level of ambitious professions. You want to win in Wall Street, you want to win in the NFL, you want to win at whatever industry that's highly competitive. Balance ain't getting it done. It's simply not. And the best players in the history of the NFL, the best coaches in the history of the NFL, the best general managers in the history of the NFL weren't really balanced individuals. They just don't. They're all freaking in. And I just think you talk to these people, you get similar vibes from the successful people. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm very, very fortunate that I got hired by a guy that's going to go down as probably the chubby Bill Walsh and Andy Reid. And when I'm part of the Eagles, I got to know a lot of people in the NFL that went on to become head coaches, that are head coaches, that are general managers, that are just throughout the league. Listen, I did not control that. I would have taken any job when I left Fresno State. I just wanted to work in the NFL. I didn't know anyone in Philly. I didn't know Andy Reid. And it just kind of it just happened. And I'm very, very fortunate to have been around these people and see what it looks like and know the way they sound. And even the Eagles, like who went through a really, really rough stretch, no team pivots faster. Like they fucked up, right? But it's hard. They lost two good coordinators, an offensive coordinator who is a star. The way people talk about Shane Steichen is like, yeah, he's one of the best play callers. And that's another thing talking to guys last night. That's a good example of, I think a lot of offensive coaches that ultimately become play callers are good with X's and O's, like understand schemes, can get on the board. Like the difference between Kyle Shanahan and some random offensive coordinator, if they're just talking football, most people and a lot of players might not be able to spot the difference in a meeting on the board. Obviously, there are levels of like Bill Walsh, Andy Reid, or the Shanahans. That I'm not saying that they're not better than the other guy, but if you were just watching them teach a play, they both could teach it in a very similar manner. But there is an instinct when it comes to calling plays on offense. And I was talking about it last night over dinner with a bunch of scouting buddies. A lot of people think you're kind of born with it. Like you either have it once you start calling plays, you're natural at it, or you're not. It doesn't mean you can't improve, but some guys don't have it. It's why, as fans, as us that watch the NFL, you kind of know right away, like, this guy sucks. He's just not any good. It's not because he doesn't know football. He just has no feel for calling plays. And the Eagles were a good example of that. Shane Steichen is a high-level play caller. Brian Johnson was not. Not good. Now, Kellen Moore, I'm a Kellen Moore fan. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him, but he's proven to be pretty good when he was with the Cowboys. He obviously likes to throw it more than he likes to run it, which the Eagles like. But the Eagles fucked up on their coordinators, and what did they do? They bought Vic Fangio. And Kellen Moore, who, listen, he's a polarizing individual, but I saw him with the Cowboys. Won a lot of games. They were in the playoffs, right? So I think that there's so many similarities with these high-level teams, the coaching staff, the general managers, the scouting staff. Because I worked in the NFL. It's full of a lot of ambitious people. This is not the type of job where you're going to meet a lot of lazy people. And the quote-unquote lazy guy relative to most of society is I would say a pretty hard worker. But the margins here are so thin, and the level of grind that it takes to do this profession is pretty crazy. And it's weird. You're like, well, you're just watching football. And it's true. That's all you're kind of watching and evaluating football. You're watching hours upon. I'm talking, when you work in the office, you're working 16 to 18-hour days. Now, we can argue if it's overkill, if it's necessary, but it happens. That's the way in the high-level college and in the pros, it works. It's funny, you talk to some of these former players that are getting into this profession, like DHB. I saw Shane Vereen, who a couple years ago I played golf with in the Bay Area. Really good guy. Obviously was a really high-level player for the Patriots and got a contract with the Giants. Then he got injured. He's kind of here with a team. And it's a different world. It's just a world that you work really hard as a player, but that there is a gap there because you win a game Monday, Tuesdays off. Like, you're not exactly sure what the coaches are doing. They're grinding, they're working hard. So it's always cool to see some of these players make the transition. And getting with the right team is everything. And another team that I think is really coming, because I saw these two guys. I don't know either of them, but they were walking ahead of me, and you could just tell like these guys look like they're on the same page. And clearly they have a quarterback, a pass rusher, a offensive tackle, and a corner, and a young wide receiver as the Texans. And they're a team to me to just keep a big time eye on. I mean, they got assets. They got a coach who is very highly thought of in the NFL. I think Casario is pretty damn good at his job. So I think the Texans are a team that if they do it right and build, and the one thing Casario knows is like, and he values this because he saw it in New England. If you want to beat the Ravens, if you want to beat the Chiefs, it's not just the sexy toy. It's not just, the thing that's going to get everyone excited in the middle of March. It's about getting the right type players, because you're going to have to go to war with these guys in early to mid January. And the only way to beat them is with those type players. The Patriots, the second iteration of them that won the championships in the 2010s, were not full of Randy Mosses. They were not full of like even Richard Seymour's, right? It was a lot of Julian Edelman's and Devin McCourty's. And these guys were damn good players. Dante Hightower, Matthew Slater. They a lot like the Ravens and the Chiefs. And I've seen it with the 49ers. Like their guys are not fuck around guys. Fred, and that's to me the thing when you're evaluating these guys at the combine. There are a lot of talented players here. There are a lot of guys that have the physical capabilities to be Pro Bowlers. But football is about so much more than just how fast you run, how strong you are, how good your hands are, right? It's every day for 6 months being able to put your head down and either prepare to play, practice, train, mentally study tape. It's a grind. And to be a great player, it's about doing it year after year after year after year. There is like an excitement in the monotony of just doing it over and over for a lot of these great players. And you hear some of these stories about some of these pregame speeches from these great players. I do believe Ray Lewis hit the nail on the head about, you pay me Monday through Saturday. Sundays are free. Sunday, even at the highest level, you're still just playing a game. And there's a pure element to that as an athlete that no one's thinking about the money and shit on the field. Even someone who was with the Ravens last night told me like the craziest, Patrick Queen coming into this season was going to be a free agent. They're like, God, how are we going to keep this guy focused? And they're like, Roquan just kept that dude so locked in. It never even came up. And the dude fucking played his balls off all season, because that mentality kind of carries over, right? Brandon Ayuk really wanted a contract last offseason. Didn't get it. Came in. It's like, how's he going to act? Acted like he's going to have the best season of his career. Because when you're part of a successful organization, it kind of breeds on each other. So many people are asking me about the volume. Like, what are you guys doing? How you guys are having so much success? Like, I don't know. Just high level people. We have a lot of people on and off camera and the microphone, just pretty dialed in. And it's a process that's taken a couple of years to get rolling now, and it's really rolling. But it happens with like-minded people. I was telling someone the other day, Shannon Sharp, I don't even know how old he is, early 50s. Dude does like 4 or 5 lives a week. I mean, he's going live after like fucking Laker games at night for like 2 hours. It's like you kind of got to just love the grind. You can't fake this stuff. No matter what you do, selling cars, whether you play a pro sport, whether you're in finance, like it'll catch up to you at the highest level against the best if you're competing against other high level people, and it's on full display here, right? And I'm not trying to talk down about certain teams because I respect how hard this is, but you just see some of these teams, you're like, you got no shot, you got no shot. Now you're all gonna. That's the best part about this industry is everyone's gonna make money, but not everyone's gonna win, and most teams have no chance. And listen, there is just a basic element of this business. If you don't have a quarterback, it's why going into the season, if Caleb Williams becomes a top 10 player, the Bears are going to be good. No matter who their coach is, no matter who's running the show, if he's a top 10 quarterback, they're going to be competitive. That's a fact, because that's what happens. Justin Herbert, when he was healthy, like the Chargers were competitive with Brandon Staley. Think about that. So when you have a really, really good quarterback, you could have one of the worst coaches in the league and be okay and compete, right? And when you get a good coach with a good young quarterback, you get like DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud. So a lot of people, there are going to be a lot of articles coming out with unnamed scouts, and everyone in the NFL is going to that covers the NFL. Like, put your name on it. They can't put their name on it, guys. Stop asking for these scouts to put their name on it. You want their quote. He can't put his name on it. It's not allowed. You get fired. So, but we want the information. Like, you want to know how the hot dog's made, and then you complain when you find out what's in it. Like, there's going to be character information. Some of these guys aren't great people. Some of these guys have been in trouble. These aren't just pulled out of people's what and just displayed for no reason, because there are issues. Right now, we can argue how big the issue is or not, but like, this is reality. This is a business where if you draft it, it's like this guy might go 7th overall. You're talking $25 million. It's a lot of money on the line. This is $1 billion industry. And sometimes nothing makes me more angry is when the media starts complaining about all that stuff during the draft. Because I talked to people over the course of the last couple of days. They're like, yeah, I won't argue that Caleb Williams is a really good prospect, but like, I'd probably bet against him. I don't really see it. Not that he doesn't have the physical capabilities, but they're just kind of turned off by different things. And that's part of the scouting community. You want to have different opinions. Not everyone should be thinking the same thing. People should have different views on different players, and it's why this quarterback, talked to a guy last night that does the SEC. He's like, I would not want to have to take Jayden Daniels. I wouldn't. Maybe Jayden Daniels becomes a really good player. Maybe he doesn't. Right? These are very, very risky situations. A lot of people just Drake Maye, they kind of throw their arms up. So when you really start talking to the scouting community, this is where I talk about the difference between the hype machine, which is, I guess, all of us, and in the league, because the hype machine on guys just grows and grows and grows and grows. Like, I'd say the one thing that's pretty consensus. People think that the 3 wide receivers, the LSU guy, obviously Harrison and Rome and Dunze, really good players. You're not going to meet many people like, oh, those wide receivers, I don't see it. That's pretty consistent. But I think with the quarterbacks, I think Sean Payton had a quote. He's like, we feel pretty good in our ability to evaluate, and we also feel pretty good about other teams' ability not to evaluate, and that's a point of difference. I might have screwed up the quote a little bit, and he's right. Right? A lot of people saw Patrick Mahomes and didn't see that good of a player. Right? And a couple teams did. The Chiefs loved him. Sean Payton loved him. Like, just like several years ago. You know who loved Josh Allen? Obviously, the Bills did. They traded up to get him. John Schneider. John Schneider wanted to get rid of Russell Wilson in whatever year that was, 18, and draft Josh Allen. There were a lot of people in the NFL like, he sucks. He's never going to play. He's awful. So it's all in the eye of the beholder. And you're going to be right. You're going to be wrong. Now, when it comes to the quarterback, when it comes to the Bears taking Caleb, which I think everyone believes is 100% going to happen, whoever Washington ends up taking, and then how those other quarterbacks go from then on out, not all those guys are going to be good. And when you miss on a quarterback, most times you don't just kind of run into Brock Purdy. It usually kind of derails you. Or even the Jets thought they had a lifeline, right? They thought they traded for Aaron Rodgers. And then 5 plays into the season, he tears his Achilles. So even when you screw up and you make a decision, like, there's no sure things really in life, but definitely in football, because there's no sport that quite has the injury variance. At any moment, it can happen to any player, whether it be a physical interaction like a tackle or just be a non-contact injury. I mean, hell, we saw one of the Niners' better defensive players tear his Achilles running out to the huddle. I asked Andy Reid, I'm like, have you ever seen that? And he's like, yeah, I think he thought it happened to one of his guys in like his first season in Philly in a similar situation. And it might have been in a practice, or it might have been in like a preseason game where a guy was running out. He just went down and he's out for the year. I mean, it just happens like no one fucking touched him. Think about that. Could happen to any guy. You're all pro player or just like your random special teamer. And that's what makes this league, I think, so intriguing, is there are just so many variables that there really are. Get in on the action. with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours.
I'm not that religious of a guy, so when I say this, I do believe, I'm very blessed in the sense that my experience in Philadelphia allowed me to be able to meet so many people in the NFL that I would not have been able to meet if I would have been at another team. Starting with the head coach and the general manager who, Howie won a Super Bowl with Doug Peterson. Andy's obviously won 3, but the amount of other people, the amount of people that even though I didn't work for, that have come through there and we're connected. Like I didn't work with Jason Light, but I know him through a lot of mutual people. Some guys that I worked with Philly, because he worked in Philly before I got there, now work with him. And there is just such a connection that this is why whenever I try to give people advice, I made a combined $120,000, I think, in my 3 years working in the NFL, like 25, 45, and 55 or something. And the money was completely irrelevant. The experiences and the ability of people I know and able to text for this job, I would have paid that amount of money now looking back. And it never even crossed my mind. I wasn't making that. I didn't even care. It didn't matter. Now, I didn't have a family or anything, but like that experience and those people that I was, lucky enough to work around and get to know and call friends, be able to communicate with, phone, text, changed my life. It really did, because I can come to a combine. Like I don't work in the NFL anymore. I haven't worked in the NFL a long time. I just know a lot of people from my short experience through that. And then even through this, like I'm walking around, I meet Kevin Stefanski, a couple guys in the Eagles know him really well. So I drop their name. We start bullshitting for like 5 minutes. Just got introduced to Jonathan Gannon. I'm like, hey, Jonathan, fucking let's play some golf. It's like, I'd love to. I guess he's a big golfer. Lives probably 15, 20 minutes away from me, because the guys with the Eagles love Jonathan Gannon. I mean, they love him. I would say every single guy I know on that staff, the way they speak about Jonathan Gannon, it just couldn't get any higher. And I could see, I saw him interacting with one of the guys I just had lunch with. All these guys are really, really impressive. And the league is clearly full of young, like guys in their 40s being head coaches. You understand it. Like these is pretty high level group. And he did a pretty good job at the end of the year. So had a really good time. There's nothing quite like this event. I said it, I think I tweeted it out a couple days ago. Everyone's in a good mood. Whether you're Jonathan Gannon, you're drafting 4th, or whether you're Andy Reid and you just won the Super Bowl. Whether you work, with the Steelers and you got knocked out in the first round, or you're Sean McDermott with the Bills, everyone is just, spirits are high. People are feeling good. And it's a very, very loose environment. There's just nothing quite like it. There really isn't. Everyone's interacting. You have the media, reporters, the coaches, the GM, they're all staying at the same hotels. Like everyone's around each other. You just turn around, there's just people talking with each other. There's no, I would say it's not a very secretive, you can just walk by if you're just kind of listening. You're like, God, what that guy's talking about? What's Mike McDaniel talking to that dude about? You just kind of hear things. It's crazy. It really is. And if you love football, like I love football, there's kind of a fan element to it. It's like, God damn, this is pretty sweet, but in a weird way, you're kind of numb to it. But I try not to be too numb, because I think it's pretty special. So I'm glad we got to come here. I'm glad this was a no-brainer for me. I realized probably a month ago, I got to come. Definitely glad I did. And we'll hit the home stretch here as we get ready for free agency.